Sue Sisley.
I have a PowerPoint.
Okay.
It's supposed to be that they're helping me out with. So we'll see if we can get that going here. Thank you so much. While they're loading that, I'll just go ahead. I know we're short on time. So my name, Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Sue Sisley, and I'm not sure what that is. This isn't my laptop. It's your. There you go. Okay. My name is Sue Sisley. I'm a physician. I flew out from Arizona today, all the way across the country and took the day off away from patients to talk with you guys because I felt this was so urgent. And I prepared a PowerPoint, which I'm hoping you're going to be able to see, because I come from a state that has a 4-year history with medical marijuana laws, and I wanted to share some of our experiences so that you know what you're entering into, and you can go in with eyes wide open. So my job, I'm an internist, so I do internal medicine and psychiatry, and the bulk of my practice is basically providing, I take care of veterans and first responders that have PTSD and a number of other ailments, but I'm mostly doing primary care. My other job at the University of Arizona, where I'm on the faculty at the medical school, is I do research on marijuana. So I'm the principal investigator on probably one of the only FDA-approved studies in the state of Arizona looking at using marijuana in the treatment of combat vets that have PTSD. And I wanted to give you, I know there's a lot of discussion about how the research isn't sufficient, and there's not a lot of answers about why this research is being blocked. Apparently, a lot of people say that it's being blocked at the federal level, but there's no explanation. So I wanted to share with you just briefly our experience in trying to conduct this research so you can see how many barriers you run into trying to implement a study like this. Even if with FDA approval and university IRB approval, it is nearly impossible to do marijuana research in this atmosphere of prohibition. You got just about there. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk with you just briefly about our study, and then, I'm sorry. Oh, perfect. That's great. Let's see if you guys can get it up there. I wanted to just mention, too, that I've not used marijuana personally. I have no participation in the marijuana industry. I don't write certifications, just so you're aware. I'm a scientist and a physician, and this is what I care about, is trying to understand how this medicine works for patients. So can you guys see that? Okay.
Yes.
So you can see this is our study approved by the FDA over 3 years ago and still sitting in the pipeline waiting to be implemented. In the time that it's taken, now over 3 years, you may have heard the statistic about 22 veterans a day dying, committing suicide. And so if you think about 22 veterans times all the days in the 3.5 years that this study has been blocked, over 24,000 veterans have killed themselves. And I submit to you that many of these patients could have benefited from using medical marijuana. So I'm just going to give you a glimpse of how marijuana research is designed. You can see here we were looking at the safety and efficacy of marijuana in looking at 5 different dosages of marijuana, including a placebo control. So they actually have a 0% THC that you can buy from NIDA, from the federal government. And we were looking at treating folks that had treatment-resistant PTSD, meaning they'd failed several medication trials, failed psychotherapy, nothing had helped. And we were looking at both smoked and vaporized marijuana in our study. I want to just review, because many folks have never even seen how drugs are scheduled in this country. What's fascinating to physicians is that the drugs are scheduled, the definitions are made by the DEA, not by medical professionals. So law enforcement professionals are deciding what's the medical benefit of these various drugs. And you can see having a Schedule I drug means that you have absolutely no medical benefit and a very high abuse potential. And you can see here the physician community has always been baffled by the fact that marijuana is lumped in Schedule I with all these other highly toxic drugs, some very serious psychedelic meds, and it's sort of inexplicable to health professionals. But yet, if you look at Schedule IV, which the DEA defines as having very low abuse potential, you'll see drugs like Xanax, Ativan, drugs that are famous for being highly abused. So this, you can see the scheduling of this drug doesn't make any sense in a medical realm. And this is the reason why research is being blocked. The NIDA monopoly. NIDA has the sole authority to sell marijuana study drug to researchers in this country, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. So this is the only Schedule I drug that has this third review by NIDA. It's a really strange situation. So when we do studies on other Schedule I drugs, we don't have to go through NIDA. We get FDA approval, and we simply move to implement our studies. But marijuana is in this unusual category. It's the only one that's required to do this. And so since '68, the DEA has licensed this single facility to sell cannabis to investigators that need it for studies. But unlike the FDA, when I submit a study design to the FDA, they have to respond in 30 days. NIDA has no such timetable. They can take 10 months, 10 years, 20 years, and we have evidence of that where we asked them, this actually is a slide is slightly old. 10 years ago, we asked them to sell us a marijuana study drug for a vaporizer study that was approved by the FDA, and that study is still sitting in the pipeline waiting for NIDA. So I think you can see why these studies and why the physician community is crying out for more randomized controlled trials, but they aren't going to be there, and they won't be there for many, many years. And I think that you can see that these patients here have come from all over your state begging for relief, begging for safe legal access to a medicine that they know has worked for them. And I think that as you hear their stories tonight, I think you'll see how compelling this is and why I got involved in the research side of this, because I'm desperate to understand how this drug works and know more. And these patients have become the biggest experts. They are, true experts on this drug now. This drug, the fight for marijuana research has gotten tons of mainstream media attention. So this is just one example. New York Times, Washington Post, Atlantic Monthly have all highlighted the blockade of this federally regulated marijuana research and why we need to study PTSD. It's so clear that this illness plagues a huge percentage of our population. We know that actually this data is old. Now it's over 20% of our soldiers are coming back with treatment-resistant PTSD, and you can see the disability payments that have been required to cover these folks who have difficult to treat PTSD. The meds that we have available right now to treat PTSD and other illnesses that are represented in this crowd, the FDA-approved meds for many of these illnesses, these intractable illnesses, are just not there. The FDA-approved meds sometimes give these patients onerous side effects and often are just ineffective. And you can see here for PTSD, there's only 2 FDA-approved meds on the market, Zoloft and Paxil. And any of you who know about these meds, you know that they come with sexual dysfunction, weight gain. Here are veterans trying to reintegrate into their family and plagued with all these awful side effects. The other thing that I really wanted to impress upon you today is that there is a legitimate biologic basis to using marijuana as a medicine, and it's the endocannabinoid system. This was the biggest discovery of the last couple decades. Every human body has an endocannabinoid system, and when you take exogenous marijuana into your body, whether it's vaporized, edibles, whatever, you're going to connect with that system. There are receptors throughout the body, CB1 and CB2 receptors, that react to this medicine. So there is a biological basis, very important to know. Just so you have an idea of the timeline then, our study, we worked with the FDA as a partner for a full year to design our marijuana study. So I want people to know that the FDA is not the blockade here. They have been true collaborators in trying to unblock the marijuana research. They see the importance of conducting this type of science, and they, deserve a lot of credit for understanding, for evaluating studies based on scientific merit and not on politics. And so the FDA should be lauded for that. But when they approved our study in 2011, and we sent that the same day to the DEA, 3 years later, we're still waiting for the government to sell us the study drug. So, and I just want to impress upon you that I know a lot of folks here might have trouble with the notion that this drug has to be smoked. It's very important to know that there are tons of different delivery mechanisms for this drug. Our study highlights vaporization, and you can see, I wanted to make sure you know that vaporizing, there's essentially no products of combustion when you vaporize. That's very important, especially for the physician community. We don't want to encourage people to smoke if they're going to be inhaling carcinogens. This option is very important. Edibles are very important. The oils and the possible infused products are crucial. This is why I'm involved in this effort, because I feel like a physician who is also a human being cannot rest knowing that there is a potential drug that is being forced to sit on the shelf, knowing that it could help reduce human suffering, and yet it's being shut out. So I have information about the Arizona program. I know we've got some incredible speakers here that want to talk, but I would be happy to answer questions about how Arizona has implemented we're a very conservative state. We were very nervous about this project, and we managed to embrace it, and we have some of the most conservative thinkers in our state who have now been won over by the impact it's having on our patients. And I'd love to share that story with you if you have questions. But I have further slides, but I don't want to. I'll touch on them if anybody has questions about that.
All right. Well, Dr. Sisley, thank you so much. Are you able to stick around?
Absolutely. I'm here all night. As long as you are.
Wonderful. Okay, members, do you have questions right now? Representative Gruenhagen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, are the alternative ways of administering marijuana just as effective as smoking it in terms of the effect on the patient?
Great
Dr.
question.
Sisley.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair and members, great question. I think what's fascinating, especially about the opportunity to vaporize, is it seems that vaporization even allows patients to titrate the dosage more precisely, where they're able to actually, adjust the dose, inhale just enough that they need for symptom control, and then stop. What's important to know, these patients here who are legit sick patients, they're not trying to get stoned. And when you're sick, it feels awful to be stoned and high, and they'll all attest the fact that they're just striving for symptom control. And I think the edibles are trickier because you don't have as much control. The onset of action is much later, and then it's a very prolonged half-life of the drug. So using edibles is tricky. Using the oils and the infused products are tricky, but patients learn how to use them. They do master it, and they're like I said, these guys are definitely becoming the experts now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions, members? Okay. Oh, Representative Schoen, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair and Doctor, I was just going to, I wanted to clarify one thing you said about the NIDA and the FDA. You said that the NIDA was the only Schedule I drug that they had control over, whether you could do research, and I know that you said otherwise you only had to get FDA approval versus the NIDA. Could you enhance that? Because when I heard that question, what came to mind was, I'm curious, would you only need FDA approval to research heroin and not the NIDA?
Madam Chair, members, this is a great question. What's really amazing is that the FDA, once they've approved, we have an example at U of A, we have an LSD study, a Schedule I drug. Once the FDA has approved that, this is, for example, an LSD-assisted psychotherapy in treating PTSD and end-of-life anxiety. So Once we get FDA approval, we then go to our university IRB, the Institutional Review Board. We get their approval to do research on human subjects, and then we simply purchase the study drug, whether it's the LSD, the MDMA, whatever Schedule I drug. We simply go to a research lab and purchase research-grade study drug. But you don't have to go through NIDA to purchase any other Schedule I drug. NIDA allocates this third mandatory review to the Public Health Service. So you may have noticed on the slide it said NIDA/PHS. The Public Health Service has this third redundant review. We've begged Congress. We've had numerous discussions with Congress urging them to work, to send a letter to HHS asking them to end this third redundant review. But we've made zero headway in 10 years. And essentially this research has been blocked for about 40 years. There are studies. I mean, you look on clinicaltrials.gov or do any kind of Google, you'll see thousands and thousands of marijuana studies. So you're saying, why is she saying marijuana studies are blocked? What you'll notice, though, is if you look closely at those studies, what happens is they tend to approve studies looking at only the harmful side effects of marijuana or the abuse potential of marijuana. But if you dare say that you want to look at the efficacy of marijuana, how effective is marijuana in treating various illnesses, those are the studies that go into a permanent review process that they almost never emerge from. Some do, but they're usually very, very small-powered studies that have the blessing of NIDA because they fit into NIDA's mission. NIDA's mission being to curb all illicit drug use and suppress this, suppress any information that might suggest that marijuana has medical benefit. The government has already decided for us marijuana has no medical benefit. Schedule I. So that's why you'll hear the medical community, over the last few years fighting to demand that the government reschedule this drug. The scheduling doesn't make any sense. And actually, there are a lot of physicians who argue that the drug should simply be unscheduled. It should be treated as a herbal preparation, because the truth is that this drug has remarkably low toxicity. The toxicity of this drug, if you look at our poison control centers in Arizona, like I said, we've had medical marijuana laws on the books now 4 years, and our poison control center calls have really not gone up at all. And we get 65,000 calls a year to those poison centers, and still only under 100 calls a year are even related to marijuana, and they're usually really mild things like, I feel dizzy, what do I do? Things that easily take care of themselves in an hour or two because the half-life of the drug is so short. So,
hey, thank you very much. This is fascinating, and I'm sure we could just listen to just your testimony all evening, but we do have quite a list of people, so if you can stick around, we would appreciate it. Thank you so much. Councilman Andrew